Speeds.
Hi, it's August 29th, 2017. I'm here with the lovely Bonnie Bartlett for the interviews at Oral History Project for the archive, for the... Damn, I'm so sorry. I knew I was going to screw that up. They just changed the name of it.
Oh,
I've done about 100 of these with a different name, and now...
And your name too. Say your name too.
that'll do it.
All right, here we go. Hi, it's August 29th, 2017. I'm Nancy Harrington, and I'm here with Bonnie Bartlett for the Interviews and Oral History Project in Studio City, California.
Okay, we're going to do one more take. The Interviews and Oral History of Television.
Oral History of Television. Sorry.
All good. Third time's a charm.
Hi, it's August 29th, 2017. I'm Nancy Harrington, and I'm here with Bonnie Bartlett for the Interviews an Oral History of Television in Studio City, California.
Camera speeds.
Okay, so we're going to start at the beginning with a little background information. What was your name at birth?
Bonnie Jean Bartlett.
And where and when were you born?
I was born in Moline, Illinois, and it was June 20th, 1929.
And did you grow up there as well?
Yes, I lived there until I wasn't born in Moline, Illinois. I'm sorry. I was born in Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin. And, but my name was Bonnie Jean Bartlett. But, well, yeah, my dad was working in Wisconsin. And then we probably moved to Moline. First we went to Rock Island, then we went to Moline when I was maybe 4 or 5. Yeah.
And what were your parents' names and what did they do for a living?
My mother's name was Carrie Archer, and she did not go to college. She was worked in Racine, Wisconsin in a hardware store, and then in Moline, she assisted my father when he started a business, insurance, and she became the office manager, and very good at it too. And she was the office manager in Moline of Daddy's office.
Did you have siblings?
I had one brother, 2 years older than me. His name was Robert, and he became a very successful. He took over my father's business and really became successful. He probably had the biggest insurance agency in the state of Illinois.
And what traits do you think you inherited from your parents?
Well, I was really very much like my father in most respects. He had been an actor. He had been in the army. His First World War went into when he was 16 years old. And very work guy, big salesman, really good actor, character actor. Sort of like Charles Lawton, very good actor. And my mother was a Norwegian, one of the most uncurious people I ever knew. She only wanted to do what she wanted to do. She was a brilliant bridge player, brilliant with numbers, which my brother inherited from her, not me. And from her, I tried to be like her because I thought she was a very popular woman, and I tried to be like her, but I had to get away from that because she was very cold, and she was warm outwardly, but with the family personally, very cold, and I had to work against that. As an actress, that's not good for you. However, I've always done all of our money, taken care of all our money, whether it's $1,000 or $1 million, and I'm good at that, and I've always taken care of all of that, and she taught me that.
What were your interests growing up?
Growing up?
Yeah.
I was a tomboy. I've written a little thing for a book that's going to be published called Because I Was a Girl. Anyway, it'll be published in November, I guess. My mother did love ballet. I got that from her. And so I did have some ballet classes. Reading. You could not give me enough books to read. I spent the whole summer on the porch reading. So other than acting, I did the usual things, Girl Scouts and stuff like that, but I was not interested in athletics at all.
Did you do any performing?
Yes, wherever I could. I wanted to. Some of my friends took what they called. Somebody would teach them a little piece, and they would do it. Oh, I wanted to do that because they were all doing these little pieces. My father said, "Absolutely not. That is not acting. You will not. You can take singing lessons, piano lessons, anything, but not acting lessons." He was adamant about it, and he was right. Because there were those little things where you memorized, not good.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
An actress.
An actress.
Yeah, from the start. I used to imitate all the ladies in the movies. Mae West, Jean Harlow, all the blondes. I'd imitate them and get a lot of laughs.
When was the first time you saw television?
We didn't have it. I don't think we had it. I think it was like after college. And we would stay out at Bill's parents' home and watch things like Sid Caesar. I think those are the first television shows I remember. Sid Caesar and that group. I loved that show. It was great.
So now we know from your joint interview with Bill that you went to Northwestern, that's where you met, and then after college you moved to New York. Do you remember what your very first job in television was?
I think Dan Petrie had been at Northwestern and was quite a successful director. And I think the first television show was a little bit on one of his shows. It could have been with Lee J. Cobb. It was like one of the Robert Montgomery Presents or one of those. It was a little part as a nurse. And then I got a nice part on, I think, a Philco. I had some nice scenes. Yeah. Those were.
And then in 1951, you were cast in one episode in Love of Life, correct?
No, that's incorrect, and I don't know why that's out there.
Okay.
Ellie Crown was played by a friend of mine, an actress. It was always Ellie. It was always her. Okay. I was never there.
Okay, so your first time on Love of Life was in 55 when you got cast as Vanessa.
I played Vanessa. Okay. I replaced Peggy McKay. Peggy McKay, wonderful actress.
So tell us how that came about, the audition process.
Well, I was trying, you can't get anywhere. And so I had tried to get agents and stuff. Nobody was interested. And I knew that this part was coming up, the lead on Love of Life, and I knew that there were some very big actresses up for it. But I tried to get a reading. I couldn't get a reading. I even had asked this particular agent, if he could get, nothing, they brushed me off. And then I got a call to go in and read for it because, again, Dan Petrie had suggested me to the director, Larry, and he called me in, and I read, and he loved me. And Dan had said to him, I don't know if she's right for this part, but she's a good actress. And so Larry loved me. And so they called me back. And what it was is that the producer of the show was pushing for one actress. The other producer was pushing for another actress. Larry didn't want either of them. So he called me, I think I read 4 times. And I finally got the part.
So how did it feel being on a TV set at that point?
I was terrified the first day that I went on, because it was live. You understand, all this is live. So I had to go on live the first day, and I just remember smiling a lot. And when I saw the kinescope, I was just smiling a lot. And, but yeah, I was terrified.
So, and how much dialogue did you have to memorize?
A lot.
Yeah.
I used to memorize 30 pages a night sometimes. I was on all the time, page after page and page after. I used to shake all night, you know, in anticipation, till I got used to it. Oh, it was hard.
How long did it take you to get used to it?
Probably about 4 or 5 months every day.
Did you have any memorable mishaps
Oh,
since
sure.
it was live TV?
Yeah. Well, there were a lot of mishaps. One guy came on. We only had a little bit of rehearsal, you know. He came on, he started talking double talk. And so the girl who played my sister, Jean, and I made up the dialogue. The problem with live TV is in order for the cameras to know what to do, they had to hear a certain line. And then they knew what to do. And the director would cue them. Well, when it's all off like that, you got to figure out somebody somehow got to cue in the camera. So those were hysterical times, but they were funny. If you were the one that was covering, they were funny. Then one time we had a guy on, oh my God, we covered for him all day and all week. And then the Friday, at one point I looked toward the camera and I went, ah, you know, I just blanked. So I started to cry. I started to cry, and the other actor came over and patted me, and we stood there patting each other until one of us remembered enough lines to get the camera to go to another scene. It was funny. I mean, it was terrible, but it was funny.
That's great. So why did you leave the show in 1959?
I'm not sure why. 1959, yeah, I didn't want to stay on a soap forever. And Bill was just starting to do well. I mean, he was doing Zoo Story, and that was good, although I never thought that he would go on and be so successful. But he'd gotten these wonderful reviews and everything. And I thought, I really should do something else. We also wanted to have a baby, and we weren't doing that well, having a baby. So I thought I should quit. But I never had the guts to quit. So Bill said, I'll go in and talk to them. So he went in, and he said, yeah, she wants double. He asked for double. Now, I was making $1,000 a week. So Roy, who was the producer, said, Mr. Daniels, you're working, right? And Bill said, yes. He said, how much money do you make? He said, I make $75 a week. And he said, well, your wife is making $1,000 a week. All right, you want more? He said, I'll let you know tomorrow. And that was it, because he said no, and I was off the show. He was really pissed. He was really pissed. And we were stupid to send Bill in. But I didn't have an agent at the time.
Did you eventually get an agent?
In New York, I had agents that would work for me a little bit, yeah.
So what did you do after Love of Life?
After Love of Life?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, mostly, I did some other Broadway. Off-Broadway, and I understudied and things like that. But mostly, the effort was to have a baby. And so we finally did conceive, and I had a baby, and the baby died. Only lived a day. So I said, well, I'm not leaving the hospital till I have a baby. So anyway, we said, the doctor said, no, it was just an accident. And that won't happen again, and it wouldn't happen today. But he said, you can have, I said, we've been married 10 years, and I've never conceived, and I've never used anything to stop it. So I just don't think I'm going to. So he said, well, wait a year, and then see. And so it was less than a year that we adopted Michael. And then we adopted another boy.
And so now in the 60s and 70s, you did a lot of guest spots on shows.
I'm sorry?
You did guest spots on shows in the 60s and 70s.
Yes,
So-
here, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to name a few shows and just give me your recollection of them.
Okay.
The Patty Duke Show.
Oh, I just went in for a day or two to work with Patty on something that was nothing. I didn't have anything big.
How about the Jackie Gleason Show?
That was very tiny. It was what that was. It was in Florida, and Michael Donahue or somebody. He was not. It's a name, Michael somebody, and I played his wife because they were going to use him and his real wife, and she chickened out.
Mike Douglas.
What?
Mike Douglas.
Mike Douglas. And so she chickened out, and so she kind of looked like me, and the agent called and said, got to get down to Florida to play that. And that was interesting because of Jackie Gleason, who was really a very smart man. And we didn't do the scene well at all. The other guy really wasn't an actor at all, and I wasn't. And he told us how to do the scene. Smart guy, Jackie Gleason.
How about your appearance on The Waltons?
I love that. That's really my natural thing. I played a woman that was much older, but it was a very emotional. It was just me and the husband and John Boy. And it was about a car. And it was very, I loved playing Westerns. I just felt so at home. I would do Gunsmoke over and over. I did 3 or 4 of them, but I just loved the feeling, that homey feeling. Put me in a long skirt and I'm happy.
That was a very emotional storyline.
Very
too.
emotional.
Yeah. Well, then you must have been right at home on Little House on the Prairie.
I adored Little House.
Yeah.
I would leave here at like 4 in the morning. I'd get in the car and go, and Bill would say, he said, I never saw anybody go at 4 in the morning so happy to go to work. Drive out to DeSoto and go out to Simi Valley. And it was just a fairy tale for me. Well, the whole show is like a fairy tale Western. You know, it's not realistic. But he built a whole house city out there of what this would be. And I worked mostly with Melissa, and she was the most marvelous little girl. She was so smart. We would have these interesting conversations, wonderful conversations, because she was adopted. And we talked about adoption and my boys and all of this. She was a marvelous little girl. As an adult, we became kind of like adversaries. But she was a wonderful little girl. And Michael Landon was so wonderful. And it was funny, the makeup people and the hair people were Larry Germain and Whitey. Now, Whitey had done the makeup for Marilyn Monroe. When Marilyn died, he had promised her that he would do her makeup, and he did. He went in after she was dead and did her makeup. Anyway, so Whitey's going to do my makeup. You know, so I go in and I say, okay, I know you did Marilyn Monroe. He goes, and practically nothing, you know. And then Larry, I'd go in to do the hair, and I'd say, oh no, don't part it in the middle. You have to part it on the side. He said, it's going to be parted in the middle. He parted in the middle, and he did all this stuff. I loved it. I just loved it, and I loved them, and I loved Melissa and everybody that was on the show. Victor was so much fun, and Michael Landon was just a wonderful producer. He ran the whole show.
How did you get the part?
When I went to Bill's agents, they sent me out on things, and one of the things then they finally said, you go to meet Michael Landon. It was just a general interview. And I went and I met him, or I must have met somebody before him. And then they sent me back that afternoon to meet Michael. And I met him, and I don't know if I even read or anything, but I was hired for a part. I don't know if he wrote the part for me. He just dug me, you know, he really liked me. And I don't know if he wrote it or if it was written, and I just walked in at the right time, timing, I suppose. And there I was.
What were your first impressions of him that day?
Michael?
Yeah.
Very pleasant, very nice, very nice. He was always wonderful to me. He didn't pay very well, but he was wonderful. And you know, you were part of his team. He was good.
He was also one of the primary directors. What was he like as a director?
Perfectly wonderful. And he laughed at me, always thought I was very funny, and he was very attentive. He filmed me a lot. He used, you know, and I was pleased with the way I looked, you know. I hadn't thought of myself, really. I mean, I was in my 40s, and I hadn't thought of myself, and you look beautiful on those shows, you know. Really look pretty.
So let's talk a little bit about your character, Grace Snyder. Describe her for us.
Well, she's the postmistress, very precise, kind of a little older, and when she's very, very good person, very honest, good person, and when she is paired up with Isaiah, who's Victor French, she kind of lets down her hair and they have fun. And finally they do get married, but it takes a while. But they have fun, but it was 1870 and, you know, things didn't move very fast. So a kiss was a big thing. But I loved it. I loved it.
Now, you've mentioned Victor French. Talk a little bit more about working with him.
He was just a delight. Just a delight. Now, both he and Michael drank, and I think it killed both of them. And I'm a very anti-drink person. Bill calls, he has names for it. But anyway, I've just seen it. There was a lot of drinking in my family, and a lot of drinking. And I've seen too many dinners ruined because the men were drunk. And the women, having spent 2 days cooking for some big meal, and the men are all drunk, and somebody's throwing things around. I can't abide it. I just can't abide it. I'm terrible. Carrie Nation or whatever. Anyhow, so both those guys drank. On the set, I often wondered why Michael would sit down and have lunch with us without eating. He always had a little stereo cup, you know. Well, it had vodka. That's why he didn't eat. He needed it. Killed him.
What did you think of the storyline between Grace and Isaiah, how it evolved over the seasons?
Oh, I thought it was wonderful the way they did it. I mean, it was very slow. They're just, you know, good friends and had fun together. And I mean, he wasn't about to get, you know, he was not the Marion kind. And she was a little bit of a spinster by now. She's a spinster. So it was delightful. It was delightful. And they had fun together, and then it became romantic.
You mentioned Melissa already.
Yeah.
Talk about working with the other young actors in the show. The people who played, the kids who played your children.
Yeah, they were all good. They had good parents. One of them is rather well known now. I'm not sure which one.
Kylie Richards.
That's who it is.
Yeah.
Kylie, yeah, she was lovely. And I always liked the parents. They were nice.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite episode from Little House on the Prairie?
There are a couple.
Need some water?
Excuse me. Oops.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, there are a couple. Well, I loved even the first one, going to the dance and everything. But there were a couple later on where Mr. Edwards leaves to do something. It was a very emotional, I love that thing. It was a very emotional stuff. Yeah, anything that I was really involved with that way. I remember I asked Michael, I think it was for that one when he was leaving, and Michael worked. He set up the whole scene. You had nothing to do with it. He would use the stand-ins to do the blocking, and then you'd come in and the stand-in would tell you what he wanted to do. And that was all right most of the time. But at this particular time was maybe in the third year I was there, and I felt it was all wrong what he was doing. And so I said to him, Michael, that's not right, such and such and such. And he said, well, what do you think? I said, well, it should be this, and then that, and that, and that. And then she said, and he, and down there. And he thought a minute. He looked at the cinematographer. He said, how long will it take? Because they had to relight. And the guy said, an hour. He said, oh, do it. And he redid the whole scene the way I wanted it to go. Because he knew I was right. And he accepted that. And I never had ever asked him to do that again, or never had before. I just did what he said.
And why did you leave the show?
I didn't. Victor left. Victor left the show, and we were a family with 3. And I know I was supposed to be on like 7 or 8 episodes because they told me that. But when Victor left, there was no job for me. Very sad.
But they did have one episode in a later season where he was back and had a different actress playing his wife.
I don't think so.
Were you not around then?
No, they asked me to come in, but it was just one day, and she had no words or anything. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And so Michael and I parted ways. I couldn't do that.
So in 1979, you did a TV miniseries called Ike the War Years.
Yes.
And you played Mamie Eisenhower.
Yes.
Talk
Isn't
a
that
little
funny?
bit
They
about-
dyed my hair. They did cut bangs. And it was believable because she was young. And we were told not to deal with the drinking at all. The family didn't want that in it. So just play her like a nice lady. And I said, okay. And Robert Duvall played Ike, and he was really sorry that he took the job. And he and the director would not speak. It was a terrible, terrible set. Lee Remick was in it, but she wasn't in that first part. And Duvall scared me to death. He scared me to death. And because I thought it was a very good show when I saw it. And then they went over to England and finished it. I thought it was excellent.
When you play a real life character, do you approach that differently than a non-real character?
No, because nobody ever wants you to. And so you just do the script, you know. I mean, I knew a lot about it, Mamie. And I knew a lot. I had met that woman that Ike had the affair with. I met her at CBS. I knew her. But, you know, the family was being very protective.
So we talked a little bit about this in the joint interview about St. Elsewhere. You joined the cast in 1982.
Mm-hmm.
But before you joined the cast, you had actually auditioned for a different part. Is that correct?
Yes. Let me go back.
Sure.
When did I do A Deliberate Stranger? Was that before or after St. Elsewhere?
I think
okay,
so.
I want to say something about that.
Okay.
All right, so anyway, we're on St. Elsewhere?
Yes.
Yes, I had auditioned for the part that Christina Pickles played, the nurse. But she already had the job. I mean, Bruce wanted her from the beginning. So I auditioned, and they told me that the part was taken. So I thought nothing more about it. And they were auditioning everybody in town for all these parts. And they wanted newcomers. It was all going to be newcomers. And so finally, months later, Bill gets this script. So much for newcomers. And it became Bill, Ed Flanders, and Norman Lloyd. So much for newcomers. And so anyway, no, I was delighted to do it. Whoever came, oh, I know, it was a casting woman that suggested me. She's the one.
And why did you decide that you wanted to take the part?
Because Bill wanted me to. You know?
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about Ellen Craig. How would you describe her?
Well, they all thought of her. I had never played a part where I was supposed to be really beautiful or anything. And so they always said, in the scripts they would say, she's the best looking girl that graduated since, who is that lovely girl? She played anyway. Her father was the ventriloquist.
Oh, Candice Bergen.
Candice Bergen. Best looking girl that ever graduated from Penn or something since Candice Bergen or something like that, which I was very flattered when I told the guys. I said, you know, that's not me. I'm not at all. I was a real wallflower and all this stuff. They said, oh, forget it, you know. And so that part of it was kind of fun. They always did my hair very pretty, and that was fun for me because I wasn't really supposed, you know. And I loved working with Bill and Christina. She was wonderful to work with. And Eddie, all of them.
Did you have any input with the writers for your storylines or anything?
I did, but I did it. I'm smart. I didn't go to them. I sent Bill. when we had the son, you know, and everything, and I said, look, the son is a trouble guy. I said, I want to have a grandbaby. I want to have a grandbaby on the show. How can we get that? So I said to Bill, look, let's have, say the son has met this girl, she's kind of trashy girl, and they have this baby, only he is killed. And so we're left with the trashy pregnant girl, and we'll get the baby. Well, Bill went to Bruce. There was nothing Bruce liked better than babies. He loved having babies born on the show. So he liked the idea, but he changed it. She wasn't trashy, she was kind of a high-class girl. And so they went through with that, and the boy was killed, and, you know, so then we got a grandchild. Oh, dear. Anyway, that was the only time. That was me. I did that, yeah.
Was there ever anything they gave you for her to do that you disagreed with?
Mm-mm. Never.
Mm-hmm. And did you have much interaction with Joshua Brand and John Falsey?
Nothing. Never met them.
Yeah. And how about some of the other producers you mentioned, Bruce Paltrow and Tom Fontana?
Yeah, Bruce and I, Bruce was a funny guy, with women. A lot of men were then. Anyway, you know, Blythe and Gwyneth, they were on a pedestal somewhere, and all the rest of us were just lowly peasants. And so he didn't like to be messed with, and I did have a huge fight with him once. I remember Mark calling me and saying, how could you do that? How could you talk to Bruce like that? Because I was rough. I said, you promised me the billing and you didn't give it to me. It wasn't about money. And I was underpaid. But it was, you know, about the billing. So I forced him to do it. But I did. I told him off pretty good.
You talked about working with some of the cast members. What was the feeling like between the whole ensemble? Was it
wonderful?
Yeah.
In other words, we weren't close, but there was a respect. Each and every one of us respected each and every one of us. That was there. Maybe not warm, cuddly. No, not a lot of fun, cuddly stuff at all. Tremendous respect. You know, as Bill said, Howie Mandel was a wonderful actor. He didn't even know he was a good actor, I don't think. I think he was so surprised that he got that part because he was into stand-up and all that other stuff, which he went on and did. But there wasn't anybody that wasn't wonderful. It was amazing. It was amazing.
Did you have a favorite scene partner?
Bill and Ed. Yeah, Bill and Ed.
What about favorite episode or favorite moment on the show?
I'll have to say when the son died, that was a wonderful scene. I had a scene where I had to tell Bill off. That was hard. And then toward the end, that last show, Out in the Snow, that was a good show. I loved that show.
What do you think is the legacy of St. Elsewhere?
It was the best medical show that's ever been on because it had every element. It was true, but it was also funny. They don't have humor. ER didn't have any humor. Grey's Anatomy doesn't have any humor. I mean, these guys wrote and asked and looked for humor. And that's very important.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the craft of acting. Why do you like acting?
I've always liked it. I'm so happy when I'm somebody else. I am so, that's the way it certainly started out. Just to be somebody else and imitating and so forth. And then learning more and more and more and more how to do it. Loved working with, I worked with Strasberg 8 years. I was his secretary too. But I worked with him for 8 years. I learned a lot. He was also very destructive in other ways. He was a complicated man. I love, as Bill would say, see, Bill is a kind of a natural, intuitive performer. And he loves more than anything else to make you laugh. I have a different thing. I mean, it's wonderful on Home Improvement. What's his name?
Tim Allen.
Tim Allen. one time he said, I want you to do this. And I said, I can't do that, that's shtick. He said, just do it. And it was just during the performance, I ran out and I did what he said. They screamed. And I did something else and they screamed. And he said, now, didn't that feel good? I said, yes, it felt good. It felt good, that kind of response. It feels great. Because, you know, I was the acting lady. But that was a very good show for me to be on because I did a Barney Miller that was very funny. Those are very good, but that didn't come to me as naturally as the dark part of life, which I am very interested in. And learning to do that and being good at it. I should have, Strasberg once said, with the kind of anger you had in that moment, you could have done Medea, you know? And that's what I went to New York to do, to be the great actress. And you go with life, you know, the way it works out.
That's right. What's the first thing you do when you get a script? Do you research? Do you mark it all up? What's your process?
It's hard because I don't believe in the words. I believe what's behind the words. So that's really what I'm thinking of, what I look at it. If you have time, and you don't always see it. In a play, you have time to investigate it. On television or even film, you just don't. So you do it. But it's more, I try to take the onus off the word, so I don't mark it up, no, at all. I try to take the onus off the word. If I have time, I kind of learn it obliquely, and then I'm free to find out other things. But that's hard. You don't have a lot of time.
So you're referencing doing films and theater as well. You obviously are concentrating on your TV career.
Well, it's just because it worked
Academy.
out. That's just the way it worked out.
But is there one form of a medium where you feel more comfortable?
No, I'm very comfortable on film. Mm-hmm. I'm very relaxed on film. I'm much more nervous in the theater. Much more nervous. That audience right there. But the camera, I feel, is my friend. And they're just looking at everything I do, and everything's fine. Do you know what I mean? They're just my friend watching what I'm doing. That's the way I feel.
I love that. So let's talk a little bit more about some of your guest appearances on TV shows. So you did a couple episodes of Midnight Caller. What's your recollection of that?
That was in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. And that was a good show. That got cut off because the leading lady quit. And her replacement didn't work out. So, and I was her mother. Mm-hmm. But I had 2 seasons. I was up there at the San Francisco earthquake. Oh. So that was scary.
Where were you?
I was in my dressing room. And everything went dark, and I thought, okay, I'm going to die. This is it. I'm going to die. And finally, the stage manager came by with a flashlight, said, I'll take you out. And he took me out. Fortunately, I was okay.
Wow. And then you also did a few episodes of Wise Guy. So talk a little bit about that experience.
That was fun because she was really mean. I killed somebody with a bowling ball. Can you imagine? And so it's fun to play a mean one. Oh, Bill teases me. He loves the things. So once on Murder, She Wrote, I killed somebody with something. And he says, oh, you know, he doesn't believe it for a second. But I love playing anything, you know. Yeah. I played, one of my favorite parts was I played an alcoholic mother. Mm-hmm. And that
was an after-school special, right?
After-school special, and I was really good, and it was good. I like playing that.
Yeah. Now you mentioned Home Improvement, so talk a little bit more about working with that cast and your experience
Home Improvement?
there. Home Improvement.
Well, they're wonderful. First of all, Tim is wonderful. He's a funny guy, and that was a funny show. And Pat Richardson was amazing. She's able to be so real and so believable and at the same time funny. That's hard. And so she was a delight to work with, and sometimes she would help me because, you know, you go into a sitcom and they all have their own characters, they all have their own way of doing it. It's hard, you have to fit in. Yeah. I remember Rue McClanahan said when she went into Golden Girls, it was very hard. She went into the show before that, and she said she was a wreck till she found her way of doing it, you know.
Is there a secret to that, to working your way into a cast when you're a guest spot?
I don't think so. I think you have to, first of all, you have to have the talent to pick it up and learn from it and see how it works. And everybody would be different. Everybody, each person would be different.
Yeah. You also did a few episodes of ER.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that experience.
I enjoyed that. I played the mother of the lead at the time. What is it?
Yeah, you played, oh goodness, his name is totally escaping me. Huh? Anthony Edwards.
Anthony
mother.
Edwards.
Yes.
What I remember, and I played, my old friend, Bill's old John Cullum.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, he's from New York, and his wife is a dancer, and I knew her, and I knew John and everything. So that was fun. John was there. And then I remember sitting outside between takes with George Clooney and Margulies. What was her name?
Juliana.
Juliana Margulies. Yeah. And she was talking to her father over the phone and was talking. She said he was such a wonderful man, and she was worried about a present. She was like lightweight, very lightweight. And George Clooney was so gorgeous. I remember how gorgeous, when he bit his nails. He was always biting his nails. So I knew that maybe he's gorgeous, but he's not that sure of himself. I'm sure that's okay now.
I think he's worked that out.
I think he worked that out. I think he probably, yeah.
Yeah.
But they were very, very much just wanting to be on the show, you know?
Yeah.
They were nice. They were nice. But now, I mean, she's one of Bill's favorites. Was it No. No. Who's the Mariska? It was Mariska.
Oh, Mariska Hargitay.
Mariska.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's who it was.
Okay.
It was Mariska.
Oh.
And she was on the phone telling them that she thought they should hire her for the next thing or something. That's who it was. I knew it wasn't Margulies. No, Mariska.
Mm-hmm. You had mentioned Deliberate Strangers. Did you want to talk about that?
Oh, well, because I thought that's the best work Mark Harmon's ever done.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Mark was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, now he does NCIS, and that's fine, but he was really good on that show. And very believable. Very believable, and I love doing that show. And they told me on that show, because, you know, in life, the mother, probably seduced the boy, him, you know. The director did not want to deal with that at all. Because I went in with a reading, he said, okay, now I want you to do it as if you're just the nicest, best mother in the world. And that's the way he wanted it played. So that's the way I played it.
So in 1999, you started working on Once and Again.
Mm-hmm.
So how did that come about?
They just hired me. It was Marshall Herskovitz and Ed Zwick. Yeah, I didn't read for that. They just hired me. And Celia Ward, I played her, because I thought that was, but I played her mother. Mm-hmm. And Rachel Wood, you know, that wonderful actress. Mm-hmm. She was a little girl. I loved it. I loved
Describe the character Barbara Brooks.
It's hard that she was developed. She and the husband was, he's no longer with us. Wonderful director. Can't think of his name right now.
You know, I don't think we wrote down his name.
No. Anyway, very good director and actor. And that was really the relationship. She was very much, he was the strong one and she was the but very, very strong. And dealing with this family. Yeah. She was a smart lady. I wish I could remember his name. Can't.
I watched the episode last night. with you and Celia where she was asking you why you weren't closer and why you couldn't communicate. And when you were describing your mother, it just kind of struck me that
Exactly.
did you take a lot from your mother
I take
for
a
that?
lot. I play
Yeah.
my mother all the time. I play my aunts and my grandmas. I play all those ladies all the time.
Paul Mazursky.
Paul Mazursky, wonderful guy.
Yeah, yeah, he was great.
Wonderful guy.
Yeah.
And yes, and now I remember too on that show, okay, I had a son who,
Patrick Dempsey.
and he was wonderful, playing a, not retarded, like a schizophrenic. And I loved those scenes because I would like anything like that, you know. Yeah, he was a schizophrenic. And I played the mother trying to, he couldn't deal with me.
Yeah.
He didn't know me. And oh, God, that was hard. That was hard.
Really great show.
But she could be that kind of mother, yeah.
So you played a mother in many, many roles.
Mothers and wives.
Yeah. So how did you feel about when you were getting cast in those kinds of roles? Did you enjoy doing that work? Did you?
I did very much so, because I enjoyed being a mother in life, you know. I mean, I changed a lot over the years, you know. I mean, Love of Life was sort of like, well, soap opera is not real. Soap opera is just hard work. Doing the westerns, I love them and I fit into that very well. I never got to play a lot of the parts that I wanted to, like Medea, you know. And I didn't develop that. You know, you can't have everything in life. And I never developed that side. If I had not been married, if I had not had 2 children, maybe I would have. But I would prefer to be married and have the children than to have had that life. I really do. Because I think that's a lonely life.
Talk a little bit about working with Marshall Herskovitz and Ed Zwick.
They're so good. They're so smart. And they're very different. Marshall will have you do a scene 10 times. I say, we've got it, we've got it. He said, well, maybe there's something there we'll catch. And he'll make you do it 10 times. Ed just knows what he's doing, and bump, 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 and you do it, and it's good, and that's it. He's very much more sure of himself as a director. And Marshall is more exploratory, more exploratory. But wears you out. We would say, what's his name? Paul. Paul and I would say, are we going to say no? We're not going to do it again? Shall we say no? No, we're not going to do it again. And then we go out and do it again. He had us do things, oh, so many times. So many times.
Do you have a favorite moment or episode from doing that show?
I think it was the scene I did with Patrick. Yeah. He was doing character parts, and then he wanted to be a leading man. So he...
Yeah, that show sort of revived his career a little bit.
He deliberately changed.
Yeah. And then in 1999, you were in Tuesdays with Maury.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that experience working with Jack Lemmon.
Well, he was the nicest man. You know, we had known him in New York. He was married to a woman named Cynthia in those early years, and they were a couple around town. She was blonde, and they were the couple around town. And Bill and I were kind of the second-rate, maybe, couple. They were very big. And then he went, when he went to Hollywood, became a big star. We never saw him. And then he and Cynthia got divorced, and he married another lady. And where are we?
We're talking about Tuesdays with Maury.
Oh, yeah, Tuesdays, okay. So when I was cast for that, it was a small role, but I was happy to do it. I loved this story, and he was a delight, and he came in every day. I knew he was sick. He was already sick, but he came in every day, and he knew everything, and he did it. It was beautiful, and he was very dear to me, and drove me home a couple of times because it was at night. I didn't like driving back from there. Very, very lovely man.
Talk about who you played in the movie.
His wife.
Mm-hmm.
I played his wife.
Yeah.
And I had to just worry about him. And it wasn't a very big part, but I was happy to do it. Happy to do it.
And then one of your most recent appearances was on Better Call Saul.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about how that came about. And
Well, that was really peculiar because I went in and I read a scene, and then they called me, and they wanted me to do it, and I said, fine. And I get there, and that scene's not there. There are just these odd lines here and there, and I was really a little bit humiliated because I thought, ooh, you know, there's nothing there. And I started out the first, but you know, I can do anything. So then I was fun. The women I was working with were fun, nice. Carol Mansell and Patricia. Anyway, and then as I got to know Bob Odenkirk and the way he worked, which is very different, I got intrigued because I had never watched Breaking Bad. And so I didn't know how they did this. And so I thought, this is very interesting because he's a guy, the first time you do it, he's very funny. And then he cuts back, and he cuts back, and he cuts back because he doesn't want it to be funny. He wants it to be so real and no shtick, nothing. You know what I mean? He's just the opposite of, say, a Tim Allen. And because he doesn't go for the laughs at all, and he can get a lot of laughs. He's fascinating to watch. And the way they're doing it, it's a new thing. There's such a difference in age between culture difference. This is very different. You know, and I find it fascinating. I find it fascinating. I say I'm very flexible, and I love working with him. Love it.
Yeah.
So I ended up enjoying it.
That's great. So you're talking about cultural differences and the changing. How have roles for women changed since you've started acting?
Well, first of all, there's a lot more diversity. There are a lot more, I'm not sure the correct word to say, but black actresses doing a lot more. Not so many Asian, but a lot of black. And regular people. You know, when I was young in New York, I did a lot of commercials that were blonde mothers, young blonde mothers. They don't do that anymore. Everybody is represented. Homely, beautiful, red, black, you know, whatever it is. I think they're trying to represent the world as it is. And that's good. That's certainly good for now.
Yeah.
I think that's excellent.
Yep. So how has the industry in general changed, do you think?
Well, it changes so fast I can't keep up with it. You know, so it takes me a while. I mean, we're really, with our grandchildren, oh, we're in another world. We're in another world.
Did you have any mentors throughout your career?
Other than Lee?
Yeah.
Yes, a wonderful high school teacher, Barbara Garst, in Moline. Wonderful. I was very pleased to have her. She was wonderful for everybody. Yeah, she was great. And I was very lucky to have her. She was an English teacher and the drama teacher, coach. Mm-hmm. She did the plays. She was we did Shakespeare, we did everything.
What was the first play you were in high school?
In high school, I think it was As You Like It. Mm-hmm. And then I did Lady Macbeth. Did that a couple of times.
What advice would you give to an aspiring actress?
An actress?
Yes.
Well, that you instinctively have to be an actress, that it's there. You're not there to be famous or anything like that, that you're an actress and you know that you're really an actress and you can play other parts and you can do other, not just being a pretty girl or something like that, you know. I don't know, because parts of it are not a good life. Parts of it are not a good life. And if you can wade through all of that, today particularly, you have to be able to, and as Katharine Hepburn always says, you can't have it all. You cannot have it all. So don't think you can. Got to be smart too. Talented and smart. And if you don't think you have it compared to other, then don't try it. Do something else. And you have to be able to weather the times when you have nothing. That's very hard.
Yeah.
So you have to have a strong feeling of yourself, of who you are. Of who you are. Yeah.
What's your proudest career achievement?
My boys. No, that's the best part. Yeah, my sons.
Yeah.
They're not career. Let's see. What would that be? I don't know. I like it all. I like it all.
Do you have any career regrets?
I wish I had done more theater. Sure, I do. I would have had to leave the kids. I would have had to leave a lot of times. But I wish I had done more theater. Yeah. But that's not a bad thing.
And the final question that we like to ask everyone, how would you like to be remembered?
Like a person who is fully engaged in life, in everything. And, you know, that's the best way I can put it. Fully engaged.
Excellent. Well, that's all we have. Thank you so much for sitting down with us today.
Okay,
It's been
thank
a
you.
true pleasure.
Thank you.